Usually when we think about defending ourselves, we immediately picture physical barriers.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Like, think about it. You probably have a heavy deadbolt on your front door right now.
Yeah, or a security system.
Exactly, a security system with motion sensors. And you definitely have a password with like 16 characters. A mix of uppercase, lowercase letters, numbers, and some obscure symbol for your online bank account.
Oh, yeah, the mandatory exclamation point.
Right. We spend an unbelievable amount of time and money, and really just energy, locking down our physical and digital assets. We are completely obsessed with perimeter defense.
It is a massive industry. I mean, we build these incredibly elaborate, multi-layered fortresses to protect what we own.
Yeah.
We put up fences, we install cameras, we buy heavy safes, and we do all of this because the threat to our physical property is obvious, it's tangible.
Exactly. But then you take a step back and look at the most valuable asset we actually possess, the literal control center for every single decision we make, the engine of our entire reality, our relationships, our careers, our worldview. And suddenly when you look at how we protect that, the high-tech security system just vanishes.
It's completely gone.
The alarm system is completely unplugged, and there's a glowing neon sign on the front porch flashing, come on in, make yourself at home, rearrange the furniture.
That is the perfect, honestly terrifying way to describe it.
It's scary.
It is the absolute definition of a vulnerable, unpatched system. We are leaving the administrator privileges of our own brains completely unsecured. I mean, we guard our wallets with our lives, but we just hand over the keys to our cognitive processes to anyone with a clever advertisement, a loud political slogan, or a well-engineered algorithm.
And that is exactly why we are here today. So welcome to this high-level deep dive. Consider this your classified briefing.
Grab a notepad.
For real, if you are listening to this and you have been feeling overwhelmed, or if you are exhausted by the chaotic, deafening information environment we live in,
Which is all of us, really.
yeah, pretty much all of us. Or if you are just quietly, naggingly sensing that your decisions, your purchases, even your beliefs are being subtly steered by forces outside your direct control, you are absolutely in the right place.
You're in good company.
Today's mission is simple, but it is urgent. We are handing you the Mental Self-Defense Anti-Manipulation Manual. Our singular goal today is to help you regain control of your mind.
And to execute that mission, we are building this entire briefing on the foundational analytical materials and frameworks developed by author Maxim Yukomenko.
Yeah, his stuff is incredible.
His work is incredibly potent because it focuses not just on theory, but on application. It is heavily geared toward how we can stop passively drifting through the information landscape.
Right, actually doing something about it.
Exactly, and start consciously, deliberately designing our cognitive processes. The overarching system he describes is called mindset engineering, and today we're going to unpack the most critical component of that system, which is your mental defenses.
Right. And to tackle a subject this massive and, frankly, this invisible effectively, we are going to look at the source materials through two distinct complementary lenses today.
Setting the ground rules.
Yes. I'll be taking on the role of the behavioral analyst. So my job today is to expose the offensive strategies. I'm going to show you exactly how marketing campaigns, political narratives, and digital algorithms are actively hacking your brain's biology right now.
And pointing out all the hidden tripwires.
Exactly. I'm the one showing you how they break in.
And I will be adopting the role of the cognitive strategist. So while you map out the threats and the vulnerabilities, my focus is strictly on defense and architecture.
Go to the walls.
Right. I'll be walking you through the underlying logic, the internal audits, and the active real-time countermeasures you need to neutralize those incoming attacks, patch the vulnerabilities, and secure your mental infrastructure for the long haul.
Now, before we parachute into the trenches, I need to pause and make one thing crystal clear to you, the listener.
This is very important.
Very important. In this briefing, we are inevitably going to discuss political narratives. We have to talk about echo chambers, ideological manipulation, and the rhetoric used in modern campaigns. But I want to stress, this deep dive is strictly, uncompromisingly impartial.
100%.
We are not taking sides. We are not endorsing any political viewpoints, whether they lean left, right, or center. Our only goal today is to expose the mechanical, psychological tactics used in modern messaging.
Yes.
We want you to be able to spot the manipulation regardless of who is standing at the podium speaking, so that you can make up your own mind independently.
Precisely. We are analyzing the delivery mechanism. We are completely agnostic to the payload.
Oh, I like that phrasing.
Thanks. Because whether a manipulator is trying to sell you a pair of running shoes or a geopolitical ideology, the biological exploits they use are structurally identical. That is what we are dissecting.
Perfect. So let's establish the parameters of the modern battlefield. Before we can build a robust defense system, we have to map out the terrain.
We have to know what we're fighting.
Right. We have to understand the weapons currently actively aimed at you.
And to truly understand the weapons, you first have to deeply understand the target. Us. And the target isn't your intellect. The manipulators aren't targeting your college degree or your reading comprehension skills. The target is the human evolutionary system itself.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this is where the concept of manipulation transitions from a dark art into a hard science.
Yeah, it's biology.
It really is. Manipulators, again, whether they are selling you a politician, a lifestyle, or a subscription service, they do not treat your mind like a rational thinking entity.
No, they don't care about your logic.
Right. They don't view you as a debate partner. They treat your mind like a biological system to be hacked. And the fundamental foundational vulnerability of this human system is that the brain desperately, constantly wants to conserve energy.
It is a biological imperative that we rarely think about. We often view thinking as this ethereal, weightless activity.
Just floating in our heads.
Exactly. But thinking deeply actually burns physical calories. Our brains evolved over millions of years in harsh environments where calories were incredibly scarce.
Wait, if you wasted energy, you died.
So, over millennia, we developed mental shortcuts to survive. The logical, analytical part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, is an incredibly energy-hungry piece of biological hardware.
It takes a lot to run.
It is slow to boot up. It requires massive effort and focus to engage.
Wait, want to linger on this because it's fascinating. Are you saying that when I am sitting there trying to read a dense financial report or trying to logically untangle a complex political policy, I am physically taxing my body in a way that my evolutionary programming views as a threat to my survival?
In a subtle way, yes. Your brain is constantly running an implicit cost-benefit analysis. Like, is engaging this heavy, slow, analytical processor worth the calorie expenditure right now? If you are presented with a 40-page spreadsheet of dry facts and statistics, your prefrontal cortex has to power up to process it. Your ancient brain senses that massive energy draw and essentially says, whoa, this is too much energy for an uncertain reward. Let's look away. Let's find something easier.
And the manipulators know this. This is the core exploit.
It's the back door.
Yeah. They know that if they present you with a complex spreadsheet or a nuanced, multi-layered argument, they're going to lose you. Your brain will just refuse to engage.
It's too expensive.
So what do? They bypass the prefrontal cortex entirely. They don't even try to knock on the front door of your logic. Instead, they go straight around back to the primitive, ancient part of your brain, the amygdala.
The lizard brain.
Exactly. The center of emotions, survival, reproduction, and fear.
The amygdala is our early warning system. It is incredibly fast, and it is cheap to run. When the amygdala gets activated, it essentially initiates a hard system override.
It just takes over.
It literally shuts down or severely dampens the slow, analytical prefrontal cortex. Why? Because from an evolutionary standpoint, if a tiger is jumping out of the bushes at you, you do not need to sit down and analyze the tiger's trajectory.
Right, or calculate the mathematical probability of survival.
Exactly, or ponder the tiger's underlying motivations. You just need to run, or you need to fight. Action over analysis.
Which brings us to the first major weapon deployed on this battlefield, something the materials refer to as the fear loop.
A classic.
It's the absolute bread and butter of modern political and ideological manipulation. They manufacture a constant, inescapable us versus them dynamic.
It's everywhere.
It really is. They don't just say, here is our nuanced policy on municipal tax allocation. That would require the prefrontal cortex.
Too boring.
Yeah, too many calories. Instead, they say, if the other side wins, your entire way of life will be destroyed. Your children will be unsafe. Everything you love will burn.
Right. They're intentionally, surgically triggering that survival level threat response within you. And I want the listener to really internalize what happens next.
Yeah, pay attention to this.
The moment they successfully trigger that fear, your critical thinking isn't just politely ignoring the message. Your critical thinking is literally biologically disabled. The lights go out in the prefrontal cortex.
Because your brain genuinely believes the tiger is in the bushes. I mean, I've felt this. You read a terrifying headline and you can physically feel it.
Your chest gets tight.
Yes. Your chest gets tight. Your heart rate spikes. You are flooded with cortisol and adrenaline.
And in that state of physiological arousal, you are no longer a rational voter or a rational citizen or a rational consumer.
You're just reacting.
You are a biological organism desperately looking for safety. Your visual field narrows, your cognitive flexibility vanishes, and you just want the threat to go away.
And conveniently, miraculously, the very manipulator who triggered that fear in the first place is standing right there, offering themselves as the sole savior.
Exactly. They create the disease so they can sell you the cure.
It is incredibly effective, and quite frankly, it's exhausting just talking about it. But fear is only half the arsenal. Let's talk about the other side of the coin, the dopamine trap.
Ah, yes, the carrot.
Right, because if politics generally uses the stick, modern marketing aggressively uses the carrot. Marketers use intermittent rewards to hack that exact same primitive, energy-saving brain.
They do.
Just think about your smartphone notifications for a second. The little red dots, the sudden pings, the haptic vibrations in your pocket. You don't know what that notification is before you look at it.
Could be anything.
It could be an incredibly important message from a loved one. Or it could be an automated, useless email from a hardware store you visited 3 years ago.
That unpredictability is the crucial variable. It mimics the ancient environment of foraging. In the wild, you didn't know if the next bush you checked was going to have berries or be empty, so your brain wired itself to compel you to check every single bush. Every time you check and you find a berry, or in our case, a like on social media or a text message, you get a tiny potent hit of dopamine.
And dopamine feels good.
Well, it's not just about pleasure, it's the molecule of motivation and seeking. It trains your brain, do that again.
Exactly. And modern marketing weaponizes this seeking behavior to create what's known as a scarcity mindset. Think about booking a hotel room online. You are looking at a room and suddenly a red banner pops up.
Oh, I hate those.
Flash sale, countdown timer, 14 minutes remaining, only 2 rooms left at this price. 15 other people are looking at this room right now.
It is a brilliantly constructed pressure cooker.
It really is. I've fallen for it so many times.
Yeah.
I start sweating. I start panicking. I wasn't even sure I wanted to go to this city. And suddenly I'm throwing my credit card at the screen.
Just to secure the room.
Right. What they are doing is creating a synthetic, entirely artificial environment of extreme scarcity and urgency. They're forcing you to make an impulsive decision based on a manufactured craving, rather than a genuine, logical evaluation of your needs and budget.
Because your amygdala is screaming.
Yes. It's screaming, grab the berries before the other foragers get them, while your prefrontal cortex is taking a nap.
And this leads us to a fascinating compounding effect. What happens to a biological system when it is constantly bouncing back and forth between manufactured fear and manufactured craving?
It crashes. You get completely exhausted.
Exactly. Your cognitive resources are finite. When you are continuously exposed to the fear loop and the dopamine trap, you enter a state of chronic cognitive depletion.
Burnout.
Yes. And it is in this state of sheer exhaustion that you become perfectly, helplessly vulnerable to the next tactic, information overload.
Yes, the source materials call this specific tactic the Firehose of falsehood. And honestly, this is one of the most terrifying concepts we are going to cover today.
It really is.
It's the strategy of broadcasting so many different messages so rapidly across so many different channels and platforms that your brain simply short-circuits.
The logic behind the Firehose of falsehood is incredibly counterintuitive, but it is brilliant in a very dark, cynical way.
How so?
Well, traditionally, you would think that a lie needs to be carefully constructed, internally consistent, and highly plausible to be believed. But the Firehose of falsehood proves that volume, rapidity, and repetition can effortlessly defeat logic.
Just overwhelm the system.
Right. If a manipulator throws one single coherent lie at you, your prefrontal cortex might actually have the energy to boot up, fact-check it, and reject it. But if they throw 50 lies, half-truths, contradictory statements, and wild conspiracy theories at you every single day across television, social media, and radio, your brain experiences acute mental fatigue.
Your brain just throws its hands up in the air and says, I physically cannot process this much conflicting data. I don't have the calories for this.
It surrenders.
And the result of that surrender is what the sources identify as cognitive tunneling. You get so exhausted trying to sift through the noise to find the objective truth that you just give up. You retreat into your tunnel.
You shut down.
You narrow your focus only to simple, immediate, highly emotional signals. You end up accepting whatever narrative is easiest to digest, or whatever narrative is repeated the loudest, simply to make the cognitive pain and confusion stop.
It is a forced surrender through exhaustion. And we see this exact same principle of exploiting cognitive fatigue mirrored in the digital infrastructure itself. We see it in what the industry calls choice architecture, or more colloquially, dark patterns.
Oh, dark patterns. These are the absolute worst. If the firehose of falsehood is the artillery, dark patterns are the layout of the digital minefield.
Exactly. A dark pattern is the deliberate psychological design of a user interface intended to trick you into taking actions you wouldn't otherwise take.
Like the cookie banners.
Yes. Consider the cookie consent banners that pop up on almost every single website you visit today. The manipulator, in this case, the website designer, uses visual hierarchy against your tired brain. The accept all button is massive.
And usually bright green or blue.
Right, a reassuring color, and it is positioned exactly where your thumb naturally rests on the screen.
It is the path of absolute least resistance
Hmm.
and the decline or manage preferences button. It's tiny. It's grayed out so it looks unclickable.
Or it's buried under a massive wall of legal text.
Or it requires you to click through 3 different submenus and manually uncheck 50 individual boxes. They're deliberately hiding the no.
They are.
They're actively using your brain's evolutionary desire to conserve energy, to force compliance. They know that after a long day of work, you are way too cognitively fatigued to spend 3 minutes unchecking tracking boxes just to read a recipe.
So you just give in.
Yeah, you just sigh, surrender your data, and click the big shiny button to make the annoyance go away. Yeah. Reading through these sources and preparing for this deep dive, I kept thinking about the terminology we usually use for this stuff.
What do you mean?
Well, we often talk about these manipulations like they're computer viruses. We say things like malware infecting a hard drive or a glitch in the system, but I actually think that's way too passive.
Okay, how would you frame it?
It implies the machine is just broken.
Mm.
To me, it's less like a computer virus and more like you are driving your car down the highway and you suddenly let a complete stranger take the wheel simply because they jumped into the passenger seat and yelled, "Fire!"
Oh, that is a much more accurate metaphor
Yeah.
because the vehicle itself is functioning perfectly.
Right. If someone yelled fire in your car, you wouldn't just cover your eyes and let go of the steering wheel while going 70 miles an hour. You would assess the situation.
You'd look for smoke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But cognitively, that is exactly what we are doing. We are letting these dialogical hacks dictate our actions and steer our lives. We're taking our hands off the wheel.
And extending your metaphor, what the Firehose of falsehood does is it puts 50 strangers in the backseat of your car, and they are all screaming different directions at you simultaneously until you are so exhausted and confused that you just pull over and hand them the keys.
That is a terrifying image.
What's fascinating and chilling here is that none of this is an accident of the modern age. These are systematic, engineered exploitations of our evolutionary wiring.
It's all by design.
The manipulators are essentially using the ancient, unchangeable source code of human survival to run unauthorized, malicious software in our minds. They are literally weaponizing our biology against our logic.
Which is an utterly terrifying thought. If our own biology is working against us, and the battlefield is heavily rigged with fear loops, dopamine traps, fire hoses of falsehood, and dark patterns, how do we even begin to fight back? Are we just doomed to be manipulated?
That is the pivotal transition of our briefing. Because if we know these traps exist, and let's be honest, intuitively, most of us know that marketing and politics are highly manipulative.
Yeah, we feel it.
So why do we keep falling for them? Why does the stranger keep grabbing the steering wheel? It comes down to a fundamental, deeply ingrained vulnerability in our self-perception, something the source materials identify as blind spot bias.
Ah, the dangerous assumption that we are simply too smart to be manipulated.
Exactly. Blind spot bias is the ultimate illusion of invulnerability. It is the deeply comforting belief that other people fall for fake news.
Right, those gullible people over there.
Exactly. Other people get conned into buying things they don't need because of a flashy advertisement. Other people join cults or get swept up in political hysteria. But we are rational, logical, highly perceptive beings. We see through the matrix.
It's a pure ego.
And this specific bias is the manipulator's absolute best friend, because the moment you believe you are immune to manipulation, you drop your defenses entirely.
You stop checking the locks.
You stop verifying. You stop questioning. You become the easiest, most predictable target in the room.
I have to admit, I struggle with this constantly. When I see someone sharing an obviously fake article online, I think, how could they be so gullible? I would never do that.
We all do it.
But then I catch myself buying a gadget I don't need just because I'm a podcaster. I read a smooth ad script. I'm just vulnerable to a different flavor of manipulation.
Exactly. We all have our blind spots.
So to counter that ego-driven blind spot, we need a defense mechanism that doesn't rely on us just feeling like we're smart. We need a mechanical process. We need what Yukimenko's materials call the system filter.
Precisely. The system filter is our first line of active defense. It is, at its core, applied critical thinking. But we need to aggressively reframe how we view critical thinking.
Yeah, usually when people hear critical thinking, they picture some dry academic exercise. They picture a guy in a tweed jacket sitting in a leather chair stroking his chin, pondering philosophy.
Right, it sounds slow and boring.
Totally disconnected from reality.
But in the context of mental self-defense, it is not an academic exercise. It is a proactive, mechanical, almost aggressive filter. It is an active verification process. It is the conscious, repeated decision to pause and verify facts instead of just blindly absorbing the emotional narrative that was hand-delivered to your amygdala.
But here's the catch. You have to build that mental muscle. You wouldn't expect to run a marathon tomorrow without months of training.
I certainly wouldn't.
And you absolutely cannot expect your lazy prefrontal cortex to suddenly deflect a fire hose of falsehood without rigorous conditioning. The source materials are very clear on how to build this muscle, and it involves intentional friction.
You have to make it hard on yourself.
First, you have to intentionally, regularly read materials that heavily challenge your worldview. If you only consume media that tells you how right and brilliant you already are, you are not thinking. You are just comforting yourself. You are marinating in your own bias.
And second, you must engage in structured debate. Now, to be clear, I do not mean getting into shouting matches in the comments section of a social media post.
Oh, please, no.
That is just amygdala-driven noise. I mean, actual logical discussion with someone you respect where you are forced to clearly articulate your underlying premises and defend them with verifiable evidence, not just feelings.
And here's a third method that I absolutely loved from the source material because it sounds so counterintuitive at first. Solving complex logic puzzles.
It is surprisingly effective.
Sounds almost childish, right? Like, oh, you want to defend against geopolitical propaganda? Go do a Sudoku. But the psychological mechanism behind it is profound. It forces the mind completely off its lazy autopilot. It demands severe cognitive friction.
It forces the brain to deal with absolute, unyielding constraints rather than fluid emotional associations. When you solve a logic puzzle, there is no room for narrative.
The materials actually provide a perfect example of this. It's a logic puzzle called 6 Friends and Their Colors.
I want to actually take a minute and walk through it right now because it illustrates exactly how this mental friction feels in the body.
Let's do it. So if you're listening, try to follow along. You have 6 friends, Anna, Alexander, David, Victoria, Mikhail, and Julia. And you have 6 clothing colors. Red, green, blue, orange, yellow, and purple. Each person wears exactly one color. No overlaps.
Okay, standard setup.
Yeah.
And then you are given a strict set of constraints.
Right. Here are the constraints. Anna wears either purple or red.
Yeah.
Alexander does not wear yellow or blue. David does not wear purple or red. Victoria wears either blue or purple. Julia wears green. And Mikhail does not wear yellow, orange, purple, or red.
Now, stop right there. When the listener hears that jumble of names and colors, notice what happens. Your amygdala cannot help you here.
Not at all.
Emotion, political affiliation, or your background cannot solve this puzzle. You can't feel your way to the answer. Your prefrontal cortex has to forcibly engage. You have to map the variables. You have to burn calories.
Exactly. I remember trying to solve this, and my first instinct was just to guess. But you can't. You have to start with the single absolute fact. Julia wears green.
Okay, that's one locked in. Green is gone.
Then you have to look for the most constrained variable. That's Mikhail. The constraints say Mikhail cannot wear yellow, orange, purple, or red.
And he can't wear green because Julia has it.
Right. So process of elimination, the only color left in the universe for Mikhail is blue. Boom, Mikhail is blue.
And once you establish that logical anchor, the rest of the system cascades.
Right. If Mikhail's blue, then you look at Victoria. Victoria's rule was she wears blue or purple. Well, blue is taken by Mikhail.
So Victoria must be purple.
Exactly. If Victoria's purple, you look at Anna. Anna wears purple or red. Purple is taken by Victoria, so Anna must be red.
See, You are using a strict process of elimination based on unyielding logical parameters, completely devoid of narrative.
Let's finish it. So we have Julia in green, Mikhail in blue, Victoria in purple, and Anna in red. We have David and Alexander left, and the colors yellow and orange left. David's rule says he does not wear purple or red.
That doesn't help much because those are already gone.
Right. But Alexander's rule says he does not wear yellow or blue. Since blue is gone, Alexander cannot wear yellow. That means Alexander must wear orange.
Which leaves David with yellow. Puzzle solved.
Doing that exercise and really feeling that slight mental strain is crucial. Doing that regularly trains your brain to look for structural dependencies in the information you consume daily.
It becomes a habit.
Instead of just swallowing a news story whole because it makes you angry, your brain starts automatically asking, wait, if premise A is true, does premise B logically follow? What are the constraints here?
Which is vital because the system filter isn't just protecting you from external manipulators on TV or online. It is protecting you from the invisible enemies inside your own head, specifically cognitive biases.
Oh man, the invisible enemies.
Let's shine a light on those. The most pervasive one is confirmation bias. This is the brain's deep-seated tendency to fiercely hunt down, remember, and highly value any information that proves what it already believes,
while simultaneously completely ignoring, forgetting, or attacking any evidence that contradicts it. And in the modern digital era, algorithms have weaponized confirmation bias to an industrial scale to build echo chambers. The social media platforms aren't inherently evil, they are just optimizing for engagement.
They want your attention.
They realize that showing you information you already agree with makes you feel warm, fuzzy, and validated. And when you feel validated, you stay on the platform longer, which generates more ad revenue.
It's a business model.
So they quietly build a bespoke digital world around you where literally everyone seems to agree with your worldview. It feels incredible, but it's entirely artificial. It completely destroys your ability to process reality objectively.
You lose your baseline for truth. And compounding that echo chamber effect is the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Another classic.
This is a terrifying cognitive blind spot where a person's severe lack of competence in a specific area actually creates massive unearned overconfidence. It is the illusion of expertise.
Oh, we see this everywhere. It's why the guy who watched a single 15-minute YouTube video on macroeconomics suddenly feels completely qualified to argue with a central bank governor on Twitter.
Exactly.
They literally do not know enough about the subject to realize how much they don't know. The complexity is invisible to them, so they think it's simple.
It is the absolute absence of intellectual humility. And we are seeing these specific vulnerabilities, confirmation bias, and Dunning-Kruger being exploited on an entirely new, unprecedented scale right now with the rapid rise of modern AI models like ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini.
Yes, the AI threat.
Yeah.
Because these models are explicitly designed to sound authoritative. They produce highly persuasive, grammatically perfect, beautifully structured text.
But as we know, they suffer from hallucinations.
Right.
They will invent a fact out of thin air, fabricate a historical event, or cite a scientific study that does not exist, and they will present that complete fiction with absolute, unwavering confidence.
It's so convincing.
If you treat an AI like an infallible oracle, if you just accept its output because it sounds smart, you are entirely abandoning your system filter. The rule here is a classic Cold War-era maxim. Trust, but verify.
Trust, but verify.
You must practice lateral reading. When you encounter a claim, whether from an AI, a politician, or a friend, don't just read deeper vertically into that same source. Open a new tab. Move laterally. Find the primary source. Cross-reference the data with an independent database.
You know, listening to all this, if you were sitting there in your car or at the gym wondering, wait a minute, am I in an echo chamber right now? Am I suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect on certain topics? How vulnerable is my own system filter?
It's a fair question.
There is actually a highly effective way to find out. Listeners who want to know exactly where their cognitive blind spots lie can take the free critical thinking test available over at maxlife.top.
Highly recommend it.
It's a brilliant, challenging way to establish an objective baseline. Consider it a diagnostic MRI of your current defense level before we go any deeper into the manual.
It is an excellent starting point because logically, you cannot patch a vulnerability in your system that you refuse to acknowledge exists.
True. But I have to push back here. As the behavioral analyst, I have to represent the lazy human brain.
Bring it on.
We started this entire briefing by establishing that the brain naturally, biologically, wants to conserve energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's our hardwiring.
Yes.
If that's true, isn't applying this rigorous system filter, this lateral reading, this constant fact-checking and logic puzzle analysis to every single piece of information we encounter?
I see where you're going.
I mean, isn't that just utterly exhausting? How is that a sustainable way to live a normal life?
That is a very valid, incredibly common concern, and it's exactly why we must understand the algorithm of critical thinking. It is not about agonizing over every trivial detail. You don't need to critically analyze the barista's motives when they hand you a coffee.
Good, because I'd never get any work done.
Right. The algorithm is a specific four-step process deployed when it matters. Gathering reliable information, analyzing that information to separate objective fact from subjective opinion, formulating your own logical conclusions based on the constraints, and finally, making informed decisions based on that analysis.
Okay. Gather, analyze, formulate, decide.
Exactly. Now, when you first start running this algorithm consciously, yes, it absolutely feels exhausting. It is cognitive heavy lifting. It feels like going to the gym for the first time in years.
You're sore the next day.
But neuroplasticity is on our side. The brain is adaptable. The more you run this algorithm, the more your brain builds efficient neural pathways for it. What starts as a laborious, manual, high-calorie process eventually becomes a highly efficient, low-energy background habit.
Oh, that makes sense.
You begin to automatically spot logical inconsistencies without burning massive amounts of energy. You develop an intuitive, low-cost radar for manipulation.
Okay. So it's like learning to drive a manual transmission car.
Perfect analogy.
I remember when I first learned to drive a stick shift, I was sweating profusely. I was overthinking the clutch friction point, staring at the RPM gauge, panicking about stalling on a hill. It took 100% of my cognitive load just to get to the grocery store.
Right, it was exhausting.
But eventually, after a few months, you shift gears without even looking. You can drive, drink coffee, and have a conversation simultaneously, because the process became automated.
Precisely. You build conscious competence through effort until it solidifies into unconscious competence. The system filter becomes your new default setting.
Okay, so we've established the external system filter. We are gathering, we are analyzing, we are not blindly trusting the algorithm, the advertisement, or the AI. We are checking the locks on the doors.
The perimeter is secure.
But what happens when the call is coming from inside the house? So what does this all mean when it comes to our own internal dialogue? Because sometimes the manipulation has already bypassed the external filter months or years ago and taken deep root inside our heads.
That is the exact moment where we must transition from external perimeter defense to the internal system audit. And the primary indispensable tool for this internal audit is reflection.
Reflection. Okay.
Now, we need to be very precise with our definitions here because the word gets thrown around casually. In the context of mindset engineering, reflection is not just daydreaming. It is not idle thinking about your day while you stare out the window on a train.
Right, because when I usually think about a mistake I made, I'm usually just ruminating on how bad I feel. Or worse, I'm actively inventing excuses to justify my bad behavior to myself.
Exactly, which is not helpful. The sources define reflection as a vital, structured communication channel with yourself.
Structured communication.
Yes. Without active structured reflection, you cannot spot what Yucamango's materials call inserted messages. These are beliefs, desires, or deep-seated anxieties that you firmly think are your own original thoughts, but were actually artificially implanted there by external manipulation.
It's like finding code in your software that you didn't write.
That's exactly what it is.
And the primary vehicle for smuggling these inserted messages past your defenses is semantic manipulation. Words matter deeply. Manipulators use euphemisms and reframing to completely bypass your logic and directly target your emotional associations.
Give me an example.
Let's look at a classic, everyday example. A major corporation never, ever announces a price hike. A price hike sounds inherently bad. The moment you hear price hike, your prefrontal cortex boots up and says, wait, I am losing money. I need to cancel this subscription.
Right.
Instead, what do they announce? A service adjustment.
Notice the mechanics of that. Service adjustment sounds completely neutral. It almost sounds bureaucratic or even positive, like they are fine-tuning the engine for your benefit.
It doesn't trigger the amygdala's threat response.
No, it slips right past the defenses.
Yeah.
Or consider a more severe example from geopolitics, how military officials use the term collateral damage instead of civilian casualties.
That one is chilling.
It is deeply intentional. The semantic shift sanitizes the horrific reality on the ground. By using a sterile mechanical term like collateral damage, the manipulator prevents the listener from emotionally and critically engaging with the profound moral implications of the event. It keeps the prefrontal cortex offline.
It is literally hacking the code of our language to alter our perception of reality. And even more powerful than single euphemisms is the power of narrative. A compelling story acts as the ultimate Trojan horse.
Stories are powerful.
Think about it. If a manipulator just walks up to you and flatly states a highly controversial premise, your defenses go up. You will immediately argue with it.
Of course.
But if they wrap that exact same premise inside a heartbreaking or enraging or inspiring story about a specific, relatable individual, your brain completely changes its processing mode. You get swept up in the narrative arc. You empathize with the protagonist.
And while your emotional guard is down, while you are crying or cheering for the character, the underlying ideological premise of the story is quietly smuggled into your belief system, completely bypassing a critical audit.
This is exactly why reflection is non-negotiable. You have to regularly audit your own beliefs to see which ones arrived via a Trojan horse. And Yukimenko's materials outline 3 highly specific, structured methods for conducting this internal audit.
Let's break those down sequentially because they escalate in difficulty and effectiveness. Method number 1 is called the mirror.
So how does the mirror work in practice?
The mirror is about looking directly into your past experiences, but with cold analytical intent. You don't just replay an event like a movie to feel the emotions again. You actively interrogate the memory.
You ask questions.
You analyze your actions, your thoughts, and your feelings in a specific moment of failure or conflict, and you ask hard, uncomfortable questions like, why did I actually do this? Was it a conscious strategic choice, or was it a knee-jerk emotional reaction? What verifiable data can I extract from this failure?
It's moving the internal dialogue from what happened to me
Yeah.
to why did my system allow this to happen. I'll give a personal example. A while ago, I snapped at a colleague over a totally minor email issue. If I just think about it, I justify it. Well, I was stressed, and their email was annoying.
The easy way out.
Right, but using the mirror, I had to ask, why did my amygdala hijack that moment? Because I felt insecure about my own project deadline, and I projected that anxiety onto their email as a threat. It changes the whole dynamic.
It does. Okay, method number 2 is metaposition.
Metaposition.
This one is perhaps the most powerful tool in the reflection arsenal and undoubtedly the most difficult to execute. Metaposition requires you to become a time traveler of sorts.
Sounds intense.
It is. You must mentally step entirely outside of your own body, completely detach from your ego, and view your actions, decisions, and arguments from a purely third-person perspective. Imagine you are sitting in a theater, watching yourself act as the main character in a documentary.
You know, reading about the metaposition, I realize how incredibly uncomfortable that exercise actually is. If you are listening to this in your car right now, you're probably rolling your eyes thinking, this sounds like some new age meditation nonsense.
It sounds abstract.
I thought the exact same thing at first, but the psychology behind it is brutal. It requires stepping entirely out of your own ego. It is exactly like hearing a high-quality recording of your own voice for the very first time.
That is a brilliant, highly accurate analogy. What happens when you hear your voice?
You hear the recording and you instantly cringe. You think, wait, do I really sound like that? My voice is so high-pitched. I talk too fast. I say every 3 words. That's so annoying.
It shatters the illusion.
Yes. It is deeply physically uncomfortable because that objective recording completely destroys the smooth, idealized, resonant version of your voice that you hold in your own head. But here's the brutal truth. You have to listen to the recording to know what you actually sound like to the rest of the world.
Metaposition is the cognitive equivalent of that recording. It forces you to watch your own behavior without the warm, protective cushion of your internal justifications and rationalizations. You see your impatience, your biases, your impulsive reactions, exactly as they objectively exist in reality.
It mercilessly strips away the self-deception.
And that is the only way to grow. Because once you can view your system objectively, you can finally course correct objectively. Which brings us to the third most advanced method, group reflection.
Now, I want to clarify right away. Group reflection is not just grabbing a beer with your friends and complaining about your boss for an hour.
Absolutely not. That is just group rumination.
Yeah, totally different.
Group reflection is a highly structured, strictly non-judgmental brainstorming and auditing session with trusted peers, colleagues, or mentors. The absolute key here is the structure. To do it correctly, the group must analyze an event by rigidly separating the components. You must state the objective facts of a situation completely separately from the underlying reasons, and you must analyze the reasons completely separately from the emotions involved.
So you completely deconstruct the event into its atomic parts: fact, logic, emotion.
Exactly. And because the environment is explicitly non-judgmental, the goal is never to assign blame or to seek comforting validation. The singular goal is to crowdsource a system audit. It is to gain completely new lateral perspectives that your own inherent blind spots physically prevented you from seeing.
Okay, so let's summarize the defense so far. Through the mirror, the metaposition, and group reflection, we audit the internal system.
Right.
We locate the inserted messages. We find the cognitive virus or the tumor.
Right.
But just identifying the tumor doesn't heal the patient.
Yeah.
If I realize I have a deeply flawed belief that was implanted by a political ad, how do I actually extract it? We need a surgical tool.
This raises an important question. Once you realize a belief is logically flawed or a critical decision is currently being driven by emotional manipulation, how do you actively, systematically dismantle it in real time?
How do we do the surgery?
This is where we move from reflection to active countermeasures. And the most effective, time-tested tool in the manual for this specific surgery is Socratic Questioning.
Named after the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates, obviously. But to be clear to the listener, we aren't talking about studying ancient Greek philosophy or taking a college seminar here.
No toga is required.
Right. We are talking about a highly practical, devastatingly effective playbook for intellectual hygiene.
Correct. Socratic questioning is often misunderstood. It is not a weapon designed to defeat someone else in a debate and make them look foolish.
It's not a gotcha tactic.
No. It is fundamentally a tool for intellectual humility. It is the rigorous discipline of pausing the biological reaction, taking a breath, and systematically interrogating a claim, a feeling, or an argument to see if it holds structural weight.
Well, let's actually look at how this plays out in the real world against specific logical fallacies. These fallacies are the architectural tools of deception we mentioned earlier.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's take a very common one, the straw man fallacy. This is when an opponent or a manipulator on television takes your nuanced argument, intentionally distorts it into a ridiculous extreme caricature, and then aggressively attacks the extreme version because it's much easier to defeat than your actual point.
Ah, yes. To surgically dismantle a straw man, you do not defend the extreme version. You use Socratic clarification questions and examine the evidence.
How does that sound in practice?
When someone distorts the issue, you simply pause, refuse to get emotional, and ask, what exactly do we mean by this specific term? Or what actual verifiable evidence supports this extreme claim you just made?
Make them own the distortion.
You stubbornly refuse to engage with the distorted hologram. You force the conversation relentlessly back to the factual core.
Let's do another one. What about the false dilemma? This is the classic, you are either completely with us or you are an enemy of the state. The manipulator paints you into a tiny corner with only 2 doors, and conveniently, both doors serve their ultimate agenda.
For a false dilemma, the Socratic tool is alternative perspectives. When presented with A or B, you step back and ask, is there a third way to interpret this situation? Are these truly the only 2 options available in reality, or is this a false binary?
Just asking the question breaks the spell.
Exactly. By merely asking the question out loud, you break the hypnotic illusion of the binary choice. You destroy the walls of the corner they tried to trap you in.
And then there is perhaps the most common one today, the appeal to emotion. This is when a heartbreaking story or a terrifying anecdote is used to demand immediate, sweeping action, completely replacing statistics, historical context, or logical analysis.
This is where you must deploy Socratic questions regarding consequences and implications. Empathy is a wonderful human trait, but policy or major life decisions based solely on immediate emotional spikes almost always end in disaster.
So what do you ask?
When faced with an appeal to emotion, you must take a breath and ask, if we make this massive decision based entirely on this feeling today, where does this logically lead in 6 months? In 5 years? What are the hidden second-order costs that this powerful story is actively obscuring?
It's cold, analytical surgery. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to get it right.
No.
And my absolute favorite application of Socratic questioning from the Ecumenko sources isn't even about fighting other people. It's how you use it on yourself.
The internal application.
They call it the double agent method.
Yeah.
It is an incredible framework for structuring your own internal dialogue when you are wrestling with a decision. Specifically, it involves consciously pitting the opportunist inside you against the strategist.
It is a brilliant psychological mechanism to externalize internal conflict so you can actually manage it.
The source material gave a great example, and I want to flesh it out because I have lived this exact scenario. Imagine you are working a full-time job, you're already a bit burned out, but you are randomly offered a well-paid freelance side project. Immediately, the opportunist in your head lights up. The opportunist says, yes, absolutely, extra income. This is easy work. Let's take it right now before they offer it to someone else. The opportunist is entirely driven by immediate reward. It is craving the dopamine hit of a new opportunity and new money.
But if you have trained your system filter, this is the exact moment the strategist enters the internal dialogue, wielding Socratic questioning.
Right.
The strategist doesn't yell. The strategist just calmly asks, looking at our calendar, do you actually have the biological energy to take on more right now without compromising your main job or your health?
And the opportunist instantly gets defensive, right? Well, it won't take that much time. I'll just work on weekends. And the money's too good to pass up.
But the strategist pushes deeper with consequences and implications. Is this the kind of work you actually want to be doing in 5 years? Does this specific project move you toward your long-term career goals, or is it just a comfortable distraction for short-term cash?
And eventually, through this relentless Socratic back and forth, the opportunist is cornered by logic. You have to admit the uncomfortable truth to yourself. No, it doesn't advance my long-term goals at all. It will just drain the exact energy I should be putting into building the business I actually want.
The Socratic questions forcibly pulled the brain out of the short-term dopamine reaction and aligned the final decision with long-term strategy.
It is a beautiful process. But it highlights a critical reality. Performing this mental surgery effectively requires an incredibly accurate, honest baseline of your own logic skills.
Yes, it does.
If your internal strategist is weak, lazy, or untrained, the opportunist will win every single time. Biology will always beat weak logic. This is exactly why I want to note that free critical thinking test at maxlife.top one final time. If you truly want to start engineering your mindset, you absolutely must test your thinking first.
It's the first step.
You have to find out if your internal strategist is actually equipped for the job or if it needs to hit the gym.
Let's actually put this surgery to the test right now.
Well, let's do it.
I want the listener to hear what this sounds like in real time. I'm going to role play the manipulator, and you are the target. I'm going to throw a nasty false dilemma mixed with a heavy appeal to emotion at you. Ready?
I am ready. Defenses are up. Let me have it.
Okay, here we go. Listen, if you don't sign this petition and donate to our specific community security initiative right now, you clearly do not care about the safety of the children in this neighborhood. Vandalism is up, people are scared, and you are choosing to sit back and do absolutely nothing. So are you going to donate and be part of the solution, or are you going to abandon your neighbors to the criminals?
All right, stepping into the defense. First, I am not going to let my amygdala spike. I am not going to get defensive and argue about whether I care about children, because that is the emotional trap you intentionally set to distract me. Instead, I am going to use the questioning the question technique. I would pause, look at you, and ask, am I even being presented with the right question here? Why does funding this one specific initiative define my total care for the community? Is writing a check to your organization the absolute only mathematical way to secure a neighborhood? Or is that a synthetic, artificial constraint you have just created to force me to hand you money right now?
Wow. Dead in the water.
Yeah.
The pressure of the pitch completely evaporates. As the manipulator, I have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Because you utterly refuse to accept the core premise of the emotional attack. You didn't fight the narrative. You surgically removed the hook the narrative was hanging on.
It feels powerful to say that, but it requires immense discipline not to react defensively to the insult.
It really does, but it is incredibly effective when deployed correctly.
So let's pull all the way back and look at the whole board. We have the system filter to block the external noise and the firehose of falsehood. We have reflection, the mirror, the metaposition to audit the internal system and find the inserted bugs. We have Socratic questioning to surgically remove the manipulation.
The complete toolkit.
But how do we put this all together into a life? Because if we just use these tools reactively, if we're just constantly parrying attacks all day, aren't we just patching holes in a sinking ship forever?
That is the ultimate realization. Patching holes is a survival strategy. It is not a living strategy. We must eventually move from a posture of defense to a posture of architecture.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the ultimate goal of Maxim Yukomenko's materials isn't just to turn you into a paranoid, exhausted skeptic who argues with every billboard.
That sounds miserable.
It does. The goal is to introduce you to a unified, comprehensive operating system for independent living. He calls this entire framework mindset engineering.
The operating system.
It is the profound transition from living in a constant state of reaction, where you are just waiting for events to happen, constantly driven by the amygdala, endlessly putting out fires, to a state of conscious response, where you are actively, deliberately designing the conditions for your own future.
Mindset engineering is the radical act of treating your life, your emotional states, and your cognitive processes as a complex system that can be measured, debugged, and optimized. And to successfully run this operating system, you need to adopt a specific internal manifesto.
Let's break down the core principles of this engineering manifesto. Principle 1, proactivity as the default.
This is the foundational realization that you are not just the helpless sum of your external circumstances. Between any external event, a terrifying news headline, an aggressive marketing pitch, a personal insult, and your reaction to it, there is a space.
Tiny gap.
It might be a fraction of a second, but in that microscopic space, human choice exists. Proactivity is the daily, rigorous discipline of expanding that space. It is flatly refusing to let the amygdala auto-fire.
It's claiming your jurisdiction. It's saying, you can yell fire in my car, but I still decide when to turn the wheel.
I love that.
Principle 2, debugging your reactions. This one is absolutely huge for emotional regulation.
Most people view negative emotions, anger, frustration, anxiety, jealousy, as character flaws or diseases. They either try to suppress them, which never works, or they completely surrender to them and let the emotion control their actions.
A mindset engineer views negative emotions entirely differently.
Exactly. They view them purely as data. If you massively overreact to a mild piece of criticism at work, you don't beat yourself up for being sensitive. You debug the reaction. You use the metaposition and ask, what specific unexamined belief in my system triggered that massive spike in cortisol? What underlying system error caused that disproportionate response? Emotions are no longer failures. They're diagnostic tools pointing to vulnerabilities.
And finally, principle 3, radical responsibility.
This is perhaps the hardest pill to swallow in the entire manual.
It really is.
Think about an aerospace engineer. They do not complain about the laws of physics. They do not sit around whining that gravity is unfair and pulling their planes down.
That would get them very far.
No. Instead, they accept gravity as an absolute reality, and they use their understanding of aerodynamics to build a machine that uses the air to defeat gravity.
That's a great analogy.
In the exact same way, you cannot complain about cognitive biases. You cannot complain that manipulators exist in politics and marketing, or that your brain naturally wants to conserve energy. Those are the unchangeable laws of psychological physics.
So what's the alternative?
Radical responsibility means you completely stop complaining about the environment and you take absolute total control over your own internal patterns to navigate that environment successfully.
You don't complain about the wind. You learn how to adjust the sails.
Precisely. You stop being a victim of the system and you become the architect of your own mind.
And that brings us to the core mission of this entire deep dive. Why does all of this actually matter? Why should you put in the grueling, calorie-burning work of applying system filters, enduring the discomfort of reflecting on your past failures, and ruthlessly interrogating your own thoughts?
Why do the work?
Because your mind is the single most important project you will ever work on, period. Without these defenses, you are just a passive user of your own life. You are quite literally a passenger in a vehicle being driven by algorithms, marketers, and politicians who are expertly, coldly hacking your biology to serve their agendas.
But with these tools, you take the wheel back. You patch the vulnerabilities, you stop drifting, and you start designing.
So, we want to leave you with a final thought today. A diagnostic question for you to mull over on your own as you go about your week, commute to work, or scroll through your phone.
Think about this carefully.
Think about your daily routine, your consumption habits, your default emotional responses to the world. If every single decision you made tomorrow had to survive your own aggressive Socratic scrutiny, if you could no longer rely on the comfortable, low-energy autopilot of your biases or the compelling emotional stories that other people tell you, what exactly would you stop reacting to, and what would you finally start designing?
It is a question that requires immense courage and energy to answer honestly, but the answer is the beginning of independence.
It really is. Thank you for joining us for this briefing. We hope we've given you the tools to upgrade your internal security clearance and lock the front door.
Stay sharp, trust but verify, and take control of the system.
Stay vigilant out there. Until next time.